Hello all, and welcome to another episode of the Market Pulse presented by Smart Touch. I am your host, Aaron Fichera, and today we have an extraordinary guest with us, Patrick Meagher, the CTO and co-founder of Keyponents, a groundbreaking business here in Texas that is going to focus on not only manufactured components, but is really going to tackle these cost centers that are really at the heart of the affordability crisis here in America. So, Pat, welcome to the show.
Hi, Aaron. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and very excited to be here with you today.
Well, before we jump in and a little background, Keyponents recently started. I mean, it has a long history, and we're going to jump into it from prior experiences and trials and tribulations that led to this brainchild, factory build components, and what has core installation of MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, for those that are not familiar in the industry of what MEP stands for. And this is typically where the majority of the cost center resides in construction projects, whether it be commercial, residential, so forth. We've talked about Icon and other novel and new ways of manufacturing, but at the same time, some of those address the cost of framing. But in the overall scheme of things, I think what you guys do is solve huge cost centers for builders, as well as cuts down on time. So before we jump into what is Keyponents and what are you guys doing that's groundbreaking up in the DFW area, Pat, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get in this industry and what led to the development of Keyponents?
Yeah, thank you. So interesting story for sure. So I'm a longtime product development executive. Spent a good part of my career at a company called Flextronics, which is a pretty well-known, entity today. I think at the time I left, it was around $30 billion, and I ended up being the CTO of that company. It was a very, very good experience, very formative, and very career-changing for me. And maybe the background is interesting. I'll spend a few minutes because that really sets the stage for how, where we are and what we're doing in Keyponents. So, Flextronics arguably was one of the companies that changed the OEM industry. OEM, if you think of, the Ciscos and the Dells and the Apples of the world, you go back 10, 15 years, those guys all did everything in a proprietary mode. Dell is an example. We build our own computers, we have our own factories, we have our own supply chain, we do, it's all ours, right? And then the advent of the Flextronicses of the world said, well, maybe if you could aggregate, things like supply chain and things like manufacturing, we could leverage a better, dollar value for you in the process of using us. By the way, if you buy 100 capacitors, we buy 10,000 capacitors, right? So maybe you get a little bit of leverage on that. And so, scroll that forward to today, and there probably isn't many OEMs out there that don't use that model. The very large OEMs today are brand recognition. They're certainly forward-looking products, some of the back end, but largely the Flextronicses of the world do all the fulfillment. They buy the parts, they build the systems, they test them, they pack, they ship, they deliver, they warrant, they, back office fix and repair, all that kind of stuff. And that industry has, pivoted totally towards that today. And it's, a massive amount of economic value that happened there. So some of my friends and partners and longtime associates got wind of the construction industry, which is a lot like the OEM, back 15, 20 years ago, maybe even further. They make very little use of technology. They have very little economic, growth or value over a very long period of time. And the processes are the same processes they've used for, 50 years, maybe longer. And so what, in our minds, it's like that industry has not been industrialized at all. So it's a gigantic TAM. What an opportunity, right? It's not an easy thing to do, but if you could bring value, and if you look at there's lots of graphs that say, most companies do this and construction's done this. If you could just tweak that line a little bit, not even like bring it into the positive growth, but just tweak it, it has massive economic value. So I joined a company, very large company that people probably, recognize, that I think was the dawn of that thinking in the construction industry. For various reasons, it didn't work out. There was lots of challenges, around COVID and other things that happened. But for sure laid the groundwork with the idea it's time to sort of reinvent, time to industrialize the construction industry. So worked there, a lot of great outcomes. Continuing the work, and was able to, in some of that experience, distill out where I think the economic value is in construction, and actually maybe tweak the processes a little bit to create real value, and to sort of improve cost, time, quality, without sacrificing quality and things like that. So that's kind of the genesis of Keyponents. And as we go forward, I'll describe a little bit more what exactly it is that we do, and why we think that's beneficial.
Well, I mean, that perfectly gets into it is, to give context, to kind of set the stage. As you know, every successful business is there to solve a problem. In America, we have a housing problem. We have an affordability problem. We have a supply problem. We have cost and inflation
problem,
and a
right?
trade labor problem.
Right.
So there's a lot of problems that are facing us. How does Keyponents work, and how does it solve this problem?
Yeah. So again, apologize, a little bit long-winded here, and it's a little bit complex, but I'll try to describe it. So it turns out that the building processes, whether it's a single-family home, an ADU, a mid-rise, a commercial retail kind of thing, the building process is largely the same. And if you look at the economic content of a building, really the MEP systems, as you said earlier in the cast, that is where the bulk of the money is. And also, interestingly to us, we think that's what drives the process by which they build a building today. The very traditional way, and you probably see this everywhere you go. You have a utility location, and you have a build site. Yeah. And the first thing you do is you dig a bunch of holes over to the build site, right? Put in all your plumbing MEP systems and stub everything up. And then, go through inspections and, multiple trades and, multiple, problems or solutions, measure everything and make sure it's exactly where it is, and say, go, now we'll pour the foundation. So you pour a slab, PT, pier and beam, whatever it is you do, you pour a slab, and that precisely located 4-inch drain, goes like this, it moves, right? And it's well known in the industry that happens. And the reason, I think, again, this is our opinion in our studies, that, buildings are bespoke. They're one-off. Even the large production builders, you go in, Model A on lot 2 is quite different dimensionally than Model A on lot 22. And they do that because of that aberration. The pipes move. So it's difficult, if you don't solve slab problems, to prefab or pre-build slab up if you don't know that alignment. Because when you bring, if you go build a wall and you say, hey, I built a prefab wall that brought into the site, oh, wait a minute, it doesn't go there because the pipes over here, I got to move the wall. Then guess what? You just adjusted everything inside of the building, which is a huge problem. So it does not create efficiency. It does not create economic benefit. It creates more work and more complexity. So the industry knows this. So they've found a way to say, hey, the pipe moves around. I know that. So let it move around. And when it's done, after the slab's in, I'll just come in and build my wall on site in the factory on top of that pipe, wherever it is. 2 inches over, who cares? And that's the way they've done things historically forever. And by the way, I've talked to many large builders. They go, why would we do it different? We know how to do that. Is it efficient? No. Is it scalable? No. Do we have an economic model that accommodates it? Probably. Could we do better? Probably, but it's very risky, right? So how do you then, in that sort of mentality, and again,
get over that hump of
get over the hump.
This is how we already do it.
That's right. We already know how to do this. And I had a very interesting conversation with a major builder where it started off almost antagonistic. They go, look, last quarter I built 27,000 houses. You think I don't know how to build a house? Right? And we go, yeah, but wait a minute, let me explain to you, right? And so we went further. So back to sort of components, and I'll loop this story back in. What we did is we said, what if you productized the plumbing systems, the MEP systems, in a below ground cassette that we call it, and that cassette is engineered and it has all the pipes, all the brackets, all the drain, waste, vent, hot, cold water, electrical, IoT, whatever you need in there. And that cassette drops in the ground before you do anything foundationally, right? Secure it, level it. And then you say, now I actually have a 3D coordinate system that's reliable and is in the same place. By the way, the cassette was made in a factory. So it's like, boom, boom, boom. It's a production element. It's got a high quality. It's made out of light gauge steel. All the pipes, everything are secured in place. Drops in. I've taken my connection interface to outside the slab. So everything done at what we call the manifold end is just done in the dirt, right? And everything in the cassette is pre-engineered and pre-done. And by the way, so the cassette is the first product. The next product is the wall that goes on top of it. And in the wall, you have all the upper MEP pieces engineered to fit. So that's always the same, right? These are also built in a factory, highly scalable, highly repeatable. Those join. And now I'm done. I've got my MEP systems in. Everything's open and inspectable. And you get a one touch at the end. All the MEP systems are in. Oh, and by the way, if you have a second floor, it stacks on top of that. And then with the walls, then I can build bathrooms and kitchens with kits that are also highly engineered. So it becomes much more of an assembly process, not a construction process. And that's kind of the key that we call it, is the key to driving, economic value.
Well, I know we're going to kind of get into some challenges, but, first off the bat would be, what about repairs, or, if there's anything that needs to be replaced, how would you overcome that?
Significantly easier to do. Again, stories for everything, but a lot of the plumber guys that I know and talk to in the Texas area, about 60% of their work has to do with going below the slab and digging giant trenches to repair, breaks, or, the soil's kind of plastic in Texas, so it does this, pipes break and things like that. The repair process.
That's east of 35.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, you're right. But the repair process is very expensive and time consuming. So what if you also have a cassette, and then on top of the cassette, you actually have a service way, because it's covered with flooring and it's easy to get to. And so you can repair below grade from above the grade. You don't have to dig. And then wall systems are actually built out of component blocks that could easily be opened up, removed, and replaced with a new component block for whatever the function is, drain, waste, vent, hot, cold water, all that kind of stuff is in there. And so we have kind of four elements, think of a kitchen wall, a bathroom wall, a utility room wall, and what we call sort of a load or electrical, center area. And each of these walls are assembled with the appropriate pieces in there and sit on top of the cassette, and can be kind of configured and arranged in many different ways within a building platform. So it's not, it's not terribly constraining in terms of what the floor plans and, what the building designs look like. It's very easy to fit in there. So we're thinking that a component solution is exactly what helps to enable the industry. Again, go back to my days at Flextronics, much the same, even the Flextronics of the world, we are a component supplier, and maybe even our supply chain provides components to us. You think of a motherboard, you buy a motherboard from China, it drops into a computer chassis, puts a memory, drop a power supply in, which is also a component, and here's your computer, right? So the process becomes assembly versus real sort of, one-off bespoke construction. And we think that tremendously speeds the time, reduces the cost, reduces the complexity and the need for trades to come in 6-8 times within a building to do the steps that they need to do today.
So roughly, what would you expect a single family, let's start at home, 1,500, 1,600, what we know of today. Typically it takes about 6 to 8 months, maybe plus more, depending on inspections, lead times, utility permitting, labor, tariffs. We don't know going into 25, but what's the turnaround time for Keyponents? How do we create that, efficiency through scale?
How about if I say days instead of months?
Days.
Days.
You're being recorded here, right? So
Yeah, so that
we
doesn't
don't
mean
want to do
that
false advertising here. So
yeah,
days to
I
create apps.
understand. So that doesn't mean that the house gets done in days, but
Of course, the rough end, it definitely
but
takes a little
yeah,
bit
but
more.
think of the MEP backbone systems can be completed in days, right? And I think what you can do is remove uh, many layers of inspection processes, which also are part of the challenge and the months rollout, because you know we believe that we can get to almost a two-step and two-touch, if you will, inspection process, one at the start and one at the end, because again, the products are built in LGS steel, frames, if you will, and they're completely open, so you can complete everything all the way up to a functioning toilet, a functioning sink, a functioning, dishwasher, whatever, and still have visibility and inspection of the entire circuit all the way from the connection point all the way up to the termination area. Um, and the installs, my team has routinely put together these things in days, right, in job sites and in prototype work. And, for sure, full disclosure, transparency, we're a startup. We've got a lot of work to do. We're learning as we go. We've had lots of time in the factory doing these things, and we're just now moving to the field. So as we move to the field, we discover new things and maybe nuances and things like that we're trying to work with. And some of our early partners are working with us to make sure that the field solution is ready as well. And we'll continue to learn and refine and get better at what we do. But I think it has a significant potential impact on the schedule and the need for trades in any type of building arrangement.
Well, I mean, to that point, as you're kind of going into the field, bringing this into market, there is an educational component. I mean, it's something new. If you think about how we've been constructing homes, it's birthed out of the industrial era. So we've been kind of sticking to that model for nearly 100 years. So,
Correct.
I know maybe education is a hurdle, but what are some challenges that you're seeing in the market, either for this type of product or maybe just is there a growing general acceptance of modular homes versus kind of a traditional stick?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that actually is the biggest challenge, right, in my experience. And again, let me make sure your audience understands that I'm a product development guy, not from the construction industry. So maybe I'm not encumbered by some of the things there and a little bit freer in the thinking. But I think there's a lot of resistance in the industry to any kind of change and any kind of technology integration because the economic models are very fragile and have been kind of learned and determined over many, 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 many years. And there's certainly a risk aversion to that. And that's one of the things that we're trying to overcome. And, we had sort of much more aggressive, product type of instances that we still have, right? We're still working on. But I think you've got to sort of step the industry through this to gain acceptance. So we've had some fantastic conversations with, top 10, builders in the U.S. They're very interested. They're intrigued. And they have also maybe been slightly put off by work that's been done to date, right? Because we tried this or someone else tried that, it didn't work, and they washed out, blah blah blah, and it's because it really didn't create any economic advantage, right? So again, my background is in product development. It's all about cost, right? If you want to build the next best, widget, whatever it is, and the widget costs 3x what the current market is and doesn't do much more than it's DOA, right? It's just not even going to happen. So to us, that's the thing, is we're really trying to get at the root cause of process, time, reduce labor, and actual cost benefit to the customer around that. And again, I'm convinced that a component strategy is the way to do that. And the idea is that we're not a builder per se. There's plenty of builders out there. What we want to do is enable the builders of the world to be faster and more efficient and more cost effective without sacrificing quality. In fact, quite possibly creating better quality than what they do today. And I think that gets to the root of affordability. It gets to the root of scalability, and it gets to the root of like, really sort of robust supply chain solutions, which, is my background or is part of what I've done for many years.
Well, I know you're saying kind of that, experience from the past. Have you, for us, we've seen that more people, greater acceptance of modular manufacturing. I mean, some of the designs that some of these companies are doing, whether it be Titan, Studio Build, all over. It's just amazing what they do. It's not this double wide trailer that
That's right.
you kind of
That's right.
conceive. And we're just taking what you guys are doing, which is a staple of American society, which is kind of that industrial assembly line model. What other evolving not fads, but trends that you're seeing when it comes to modular home or even construction? Are we seeing smaller units? I know you talked about ADU here in Austin with the new ordinances. We have higher density on smaller lots. Are you seeing kind of a growing trend to use this type of product for smaller units?
I think the timing couldn't be better for this, right? So I think everybody in the business is for sure thinking about how to do this and how to best, improve or, grow or create more value around there. So that's good because that is happening. And because of that, I think like the sort of if you just take home building, for example, in the Texas area here, they are for sure moving, land has become very expensive. So lot size drives a lot of development. It says, well, guess what? We don't have acre lots anymore, right? We have, 50-foot wide by 100-foot deep. I got to pack these things in. And by the way, I still want to make a nice, 2,200 square foot, 3-2 kind of house. But how do I do that? And how do I take economic advantage of it? So I think those are trends that are underway. Many of the builders today, some, still will have the bigger houses on bigger lots, but quite a few of them say, in the core of this development, I'm going to build 1,000 houses and 500 of them are going to be 2,200 square foot, pretty straightforward boxes. And I'm going to figure out, modular is kind of a strong word for that, but maybe some, panelized or maybe some componentized or some streamlined way of building that, to accommodate the demand.
And, with being marketing as one of our forefronts, there's been a debate because we've heard of several people, and I know this is more of off the cuff, but what do you prefer when it comes to the nomenclature? Prefab, modular, manufactured homes? It seems like it becomes this tiny homes, small homes, cottages, ADUs. Where are we going to get a standard language, or how do we kind of cut through and kind of paint this story that this is not a double wide?
So I'm here to announce that I think the term of use will be componentized, because if you use components, you can build any of those instances and call them whatever you want, but get to a very efficient and cost-effective building methodology. And components allow you to do that. Again, not to pick on any of my old OEM friends, but they build, I think of it, cell phone guys, they build a really cheap, dirty, simple throwaway cell phone, and they build, a glorious, fold out, kind of cell phone with 2 screens and 5 cameras and whatever else you want. And guess what? It's all the same components and digital libraries that are used to construct those products. So I think maybe the word is, if you start to think about not necessarily the end product, but the methodology by which you do that, you can use components to then create any product you want. ADUs, no problem. Light commercial, no problem. Gas stations, no problem. Single family home, no problem. Mid-rise, no problem. Multifamily, no problem. You can use components to optimize both the layouts, the sort of curb appeal, if you want, and the supply chain and the timing of all of those type of buildings. So I would, again, being very bullish and bold here, I would argue that componentization is the answer, or certainly one of the things that's going to be embraced here in the future as we go to help the industry move along.
Well, mean, as we're kind of pointing towards the future and talking about challenges, sustainability, when you're historically and statistically, components as well as houses or aspects of building constructed and manufacturing, centers typically have less carbon footprint, are more sustainable. I'm assuming with less cost, you can add more to the material and offset that. So, I don't know if you could kind of elaborate on it, or is that even a priority,
Yeah,
sustainability?
yeah, absolutely. So for us at Keyponents, it's a huge priority. So, some stats, and everybody can go look this up, but the construction industry is one of the largest contributors to the carbon deposits on the planet today, period. No argument. It's clear, and it's massively, larger than the next biggest contributor, which is transportation. So think of that,
Yeah.
right? And so sustainability is absolutely key and an important element in what happens. So what we did, we chose light gauge steel as the sort of material medium to build our products out of. Light gauge steel is basically indestructible. It's 100% recyclable, and it has zero waste. And what I mean by that is, the source of most of the steel coils and sheets in the world today comes from recycled cars. So think about, we're using garbage to actually build our components versus using a natural resource, wood, which takes a long cycle time to grow and to mature. It's certainly renewable, but over a very long period of time, how many junk cars and vehicles are on the planet that we can use to make raw steel that we can then turn into components, parts that go into buildings? So there's that sort of environmental piece of it. Steel is literally indestructible. It's galvanized. It doesn't rust. It doesn't rot. It's got a 100-year warranty on it. It's insect proof. It's mold proof. It's, all of those type of things that are hugely beneficial to the long-term life cycle of a house. And then lastly, the manufacturing process produces zero, I'm talking zero as a zero waste, in that if you think about, the machines that form the studs that we do, and they cut notches and do this and put a hole in there, and all those scrap pieces go into a bin, which is 100% recyclable, right? So again, I've been on many job sites, wood builds, where, you have a massive pile of waste,
Scraps. Yeah.
goes right to the landfills, right? It has to. And so I think we're combating all of those things, or adding that benefit as well. So I don't know that manifests itself to our end customer, the buyer of a home or a building, but it for sure matters in terms of the process cycle and what we need to do for our planet as we go forward in this industry.
I mean, I think that's an excellent point of the domino effect and the interconnectedness of even the material and how we can make it sustainable to the components itself. Taking this to more of, as we're kind of nearing the end of our segment, and a broader discussion of kind of the market. Pat, what's your thoughts on our major concerns, challenges you're seeing in this upcoming year or next few years? Can be construction, the nation. What's your thoughts? What are we in for?
Well, let's see. So part of where this landed for me is really kind of poignant, because I used to live in the Washington, D.C. area, and what became obvious, and it's actually evident now in Texas too. So you can literally go into any municipality. Austin's a great example. Do you think that the school teachers and the nurses and the police officers and the civil servants that serve Austin live in the Austin city limits proper? No
No,
chance. They can't afford to.
no. As a former school teacher, no, that wasn't.
Can't
It
afford
wasn't
to.
possible.
It's, what passes as affordable today is amazing to me, even in Texas. And so getting older and and have limited time in the career, I would for sure like to be part of an industry that helps to solve like real society problems that matter. Can we make it such that affordability is real, and you don't sacrifice quality, and people that live and work in a community, actually that work in a community, can also live there and partake in the benefits of that, which then also as an outgrowth, you reduce, cars and buses and trucks on the road, which reduces carbon, all that kind of stuff. you create, more more local economies that support the grocery stores and the infrastructure in the area, which is good for everybody. So, again, these are very broad strokes, but I think, working in an industry where potentially you have that kind of influence is like a moral imperative for us, right? So we're very, very excited to be doing that. Very happy to be doing that.
Excellent. And, I always, Pat, you come here with years of experience and background, and I always like to pass along to others, and give guests, if you give an advice to anyone that's jumping into, I know we all come from different backgrounds. You were saying from Flextronics and jumping over, what advice would you give young professionals looking to get into the construction industry or just in general?
That's a great question, and maybe another small soapbox here. I apologize, but
No, please.
I've been lucky enough to spend some time with Texas State and other universities here in Texas, talking exactly about that. About what is the curriculum today in our colleges and universities for civil engineering or construction, and by the way, it also doesn't embrace technology to the extent that it can or should or could. And so a lot of work and discussion around how do we inspire people to go into this business in the future? And to me, the answer is technology. Guess what? Robotics, automation, data management, AI, RF technologies, right? All of these things can and should and absolutely will influence construction and civil engineering in the future, but only if our universities start to embrace that. And for sure, the student bodies, the students I've been lucky enough to talk to, certainly not a cross section of America, but the ones I've talked to have been very excited about that opportunity. And I think that's the way we stimulate, involvement in this industry so that it continues to be healthy and grows. As opposed to today, I think we're going to gap out on, sort of skilled trade labor and even, people coming into this business, if in fact not already. And so that also is an imperative. And I think, helping to drive a company like Keyponents that, literally leverages and uses technology and all the things that other industries are quite familiar with could help contribute to that outcome. So excited about that as well.
I love it. I am 100% behind more and more private and public partnerships, and really, how do we gear the next generation workforce to be prepared for the next generation needs? 100%. Pat, as we end today's show, I mean, for maybe the builders or the audience that want to learn a little bit more, maybe that someone's got that engineering, itch. How can they learn more about Keyponents and yourself?
Yeah. So again, we're kind of a small startup, but have big dreams and big plans. And so we have a website. There's a little bit of information. We've posted a few pictures of some of the products that we're doing. We're continuing to innovate, and as we go to the field, we'll be posting videos and things like that maybe show the process elements of what we're doing. And I encourage people to look at that and to reach back out. There's a, send me more information kind of thing on the website. And we'll make a concerted effort to engage folks, at their level to further the discussions and see where the interest is. And we're quite excited and hopeful for the future in terms of our growth and some of the other things we're looking at. There's a whole factory piece that's also maybe subject of another podcast we could go into that I think you would find to be very interesting as well. With other opportunities. So stay tuned. More to come.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited. Pat, thank you again for taking the time and sharing your background. And we're going to be rooting for this because not only, great group, but solving a huge problem that we need to solve.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And thanks to your audience. I appreciate the chance to indulge on some of these things. It's become very close to my heart, and hopefully we can execute and bring all this forward. So thank you again for the platform.
Excellent. And thank you all for taking your time and spending it here with us at the Market Pulse. We look forward to a wonderful 2025 and providing you guys with more great new technologies, guests, and market research. Have a great day.